All right, welcome listeners. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Unsecurity Podcast. This is episode 130, and the date is May 4th, 2021. Joining me is my good friend, as usual, Brad. Hi, Brad.
Hello.
All right. And I'm super excited. This is actually the first time I've met him, but you probably have heard of him before. John Strand is here with us today from Black Hills InfoSec. John, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And I can't believe it. I've been in this industry for a long time. You've been in this industry for a long time. I think you have, you've done some really cool stuff. But I can't believe it's the first time we've met.
I kind of do, because like security has these weird Venn diagrams of like spheres, right? So for years, my sphere was the SANS Institute. Like I got started as an instructor there, and I went to those conferences all the time. And when other conferences came up, people were like, dude, you gonna be at ShmooCon? I'm like, no. I do 15 to 20 conferences for the SANS Institute. I'm not gonna get on an airplane and go hang out in DC with Bruce and Heidi Potter. No, there's just no way. And then I started kind of going out to like DEF CON and ShmooCon and Black Hat and some of these places. And I realized that there's all these different groups in security and they overlap a little bit, but you don't really get into a situation where like there's really strong overlap across all of them, right? It just doesn't exist. So, once I kind of broke out of that echo chamber, started doing more stuff with Paul Security Weekly and getting out to some of these conferences, you started meeting all of these different people and all these cross-sectional analysis of where these Venn diagram circles all hit each other. And it's beautiful because you have like the B-sides group, right? Jack started up the kind of the B-sides with some core people, and that kind of became a scene. And DerbyCon became a scene. God bless DerbyCon. And ShmooCon is its own scene. And it's cool for me, like I'm becoming like one of the elder statesmen in the industry. We're all becoming Jack slowly over time. And it's kind of cool now that I've been lucky enough to hit multiple different scenes, but there's still places I just, circles and things that I just haven't really met people. And that's one of the things I'm missing horribly with COVID is getting out and meeting new people.
Right. So in your Venn diagram, are there different colors?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, right.
What color? Definitely. What color am I in? I want to be like blue or green.
You gotta be, so like there's the red and there's the blue predominantly, right? So like you got those cons that are very much like the blue side of the house, and you'll have like SANS is very much blue. It's a lot of defense. There's some offensive stuff there. Steve Sims, Ed Scotus, myself, we're definitely the reds in that blue. Then you go to DEF CON, and oh my God, that was like dark red, right? And then you have these different things, and they bleed into these different colors to different shades of purple. But now it's getting to the point where DEF CON's defense and offense, and all these different places are blending, which is where it should have been for years.
Yeah, can't fit me in a box.
Can't do that.
Box. No box.
You see, my kids, I'm like, I'm completely original. And my daughter's like, Dad, you go to conferences, you wear jeans, black T-shirts, and talk security with people. And you're like, have a beard. You're exactly like everyone else there. And I'm like, somebody's out of my will.
Keeping you in check.
It's a little bit too close to home there, honey.
So, but it's funny how like our careers take us down all these paths. I took, because we're running in this right now, Brad, with Oscar, who leads the tech services part of FRSecure, where I came to a realization that I can go stay in my technical route, or I could go a management route. That was kind of what was in front of me. And I started my career cleaning boot sector viruses off of Windows 3 boxes, and eventually I went, well, I'm going to go the management route. So now I do all this management stuff, but I don't fit really well there in terms of like how I look, how I talk. I'm kind of a jerk, to some of them, CISOs, because I don't look like a CISO.
Very much the same here.
It's kind of weird. So it sucks because like in this industry, there's this huge thing of like, how do we talk to the C-suite? And you see these presentations and they're like, here's how you talk to the C-suite. You use these secret handshakes, you get the right watch. You got people who are like, well, if you're going to talk to a C-suite, you got to dress in the suit and you got to do that. And like, F that. honestly. I spend a lot of time talking to people. I've presented at executives with executives in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and Europe and all over the place. And it comes down to one consistent theme. Yeah, actually two. The first consistent theme is be yourself, right? Like as soon as you start trying to talk to somebody and you start using words like synergy and leverage, they can pick up that you're uncomfortable. That's number one. Number two, and the second thing is analogies. How can you effectively communicate highly technical and complex issues in a way that anybody can understand them? And if you do that right, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Well, I like to say that clearly I must be good because they let me get away with looking like this.
Yeah.
If I wasn't good, I wouldn't be allowed.
Dude, I've got companies that we have had employees that have tattoos and stuff, and like I'll talk to the company in a sales call, and they're like, just so you know, if anybody shows up with tattoos, they got to make sure that they're covered at all times because that's kind of unacceptable at our company. It's like we moved to no bid because I don't want to work with those a-holes. And my big thing right now is don't party with a-holes. That's the way you isolate them. That's the way you get away from them. And if you're looking at somebody and you're making a determination, like when I was at Accenture and Anderson Consulting, their big thing was management hates beards. It looks unprofessional, and I don't work there anymore. So
that's why I left. That's why I left U.S. Bank and Wells Fargo and all those places, because it was the same thing. The most depressed I've ever been in my entire life, maybe, was when I worked at U.S. Bank. Now they've gotten better, right? So no knock on U.S. Bank, but I had to wear a suit every day.
Yeah.
No.
And to your point, I mean, why we don't have to work with the a-holes. There's so many companies that need help that want it. Go deal with someone else.
It's so funny. Like people talk about the concept of competition in the industry. Like they'll see Dave Kennedy and I, and we'll be at conferences and we're like groping each other. And I'll hang out with Kevin Johnson, Mike Poore from Inguardians, like Tim Medine is like one of my best friends. And people are like, well, aren't you a competitor? They get like swimming with sharks and Wolf of Wall Street. It's like, you got to kill your competitor. Dude, it's a game of hungry hippo. And the board is completely freaking filled with marbles. There's no oh, we got to compete with each other. Screw that. We're all just trying to get through this. And it is something that we need each other to get through. Absolutely.
And that's cool because, watching you from a distance, watching, how you've run and built, Black Hills, information security from where we're in Minneapolis, you're, physically anyway, you're in South Dakota. And just to hear you say that, I think is so cool because we need more of that. We say around here, 20%, we fight over, in terms of that competition thing, 20% of the market, while 80% of the market just sits there. It's like, why don't we work together and go get that 80% rather than fight each other?
There was a firm that we were talking to. We were at a booth. I can't remember where the hell we were. I think it was like a ISC squared conference or something. And this guy came up and he's like, yeah, I'm responsible for our company sales in the Illinois region. And I'm also out of Baton Rouge. And he's like weird towns. And he's like, so how are you guys penetrating Baton Rouge in the medical community? I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. That's not how that works. Because there's just so much work to do.
I know that. I can't take on anymore. If I take on one more thing, my admin, who happens to be my wife, by the way, I think she'll kill me.
Yeah. Oh, dude, my wife is the CFO of our company, and it's like, we're going to start another company. She's like, dear God, why? I'm like, well, I need at least 4 shell companies to create up these companies with EIN so I can create companies with Microsoft so I can do domain fronting and bounce. She's like, oh, screw it. And like my tax accountant's just like, so how many companies did you start this year? I'm like, 50. He's like, this sucks. Like, why are you doing this to me? It's like, I need it. So.
Yeah, with 2017, we split off one of our things. So what we've always been known for is how we do risk assessments, right? Not vulnerability assessments, not necessarily penetration testing. That team is getting very, very solid, but it's risk assessments. And so we made, I don't know, millions of dollars at FRSecure. And then in 2017, I said, well, I want to take this and I want to give it to our competitors. So we built another company. So now we're running 2 companies. And I'm like, I don't know if that was a smart idea. And now I'm starting a nonprofit, so I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Dude, then you're doing it right?
Yeah.
BHIS, we got the motto, proudly sucking at capitalism. And I always tell people, they come up to me and they're
Stealing
like,
that.
dude, are you a socialist and communism killed like all of these people? And don't you know about the Great Leap Forward and Stalin? It's like, yeah, I read history. But, whenever we say proudly sucking at capitalism, it doesn't mean that I hate capitalism. It's just whenever you read books on how to run a business, they lie. And we suck at capitalism because we give away tools, we give away methodologies, we give away training, we give away this stuff all the time. And the reason why we do that, what we've noticed is the more you give in this community, the more it comes back. So like I've had VC funding people come to us. I'm like, here's all of our open source projects and all these things, and this is what we're doing. They're like, well, you must be close to going out of business. I'm like, oh no, that's not. So you have these people, right? If they get an opportunity of working with FRSecure, who's giving back to the community, or they can work with a company, I'm not going to name any names, let's say big 5 consulting firms that do jack for the community, they're going to be there working with companies like ours all the time because it's a trust game. And that's all security is a trust game.
Oh yeah, we get
I love
that all
that.
the time. Like people are like, wait, you're giving away an incident response plan template?
Why wouldn't you?
You're giving away your policies?
Right?
You're what? Yeah.
And when they get hacked or something, it's like, who are we going to call? Oh, the template. How about these guys right here?
Right.
Oh,
Margo,
what
can
happened?
you kill that light, please? All right, go ahead. So.
No, I love it, man. This is cool. This is better than what I thought it was going to be, John. So this is, I love it. Because I'm not allowed to, for the last 3 years, I've been banned about talking pricing.
Oh, dude, pricing is a nightmare. I think it's stabilized. Yeah, I think it's standardized in the industry, but I think that firms like ours, I still think that we're about maybe 50 to 60% of what the very large firms are. Because like you can have a company like Booz come in and they can demand twice what companies like ours charge. And the reason why is the executives are like, oh yeah, well, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that's gonna bring that in. And I always tell people, it's like, dude, I have no problem with those companies. I trained all the people that work there, but at the exact same time, I just don't feel like they get the quality that they do with the boutique company. So
well, and I'd rather
no,
give stuff away.
Oh, never. Yeah, even presentations. A lot of the people that work there hate working there because they're like, I can't talk about anything I do ever. So yeah, screw that.
Well, I think the differentiator is you're not just a number when you work with firms like ours, right? Like you get people that really care. There's a reason the people that work for our companies work for the companies.
Right. Yeah, totally. So what's going on at Black Hills? What's new? What are you guys excited about? I know you got the pay what you can, which I love, what you're doing there.
Well, the pay, so that whole entire thing, that whole thing was just, so it all started by mistake, right? So if you look at last year, you look at COVID, you guys remember, like you go back a year ago, a little bit earlier, when this started kicking up and they started shutting everything down, you have payroll, Evan, you're terrified. How am I going to continue to feed my family and the families of people? And a bunch of us just went, there's 2 ways that you can go. You can go into a crouching defense mode. And there are companies that like laid off like a third of their employees, like right away. They're like, oh, COVID, it's bad. It's like, this is what it says. Like 30%, 40%, fire everybody. And I think that was the wrong approach. And then there was firms out there that are like, here we go. We're going to try a bunch of stuff, right? It's just, we're going to be monkeys throwing poop at a wall and see what sticks. And we started out with Chris Brenton, who's a partner of mine at Active Countermeasures. And he did this free network threat hunting training, and it got 5,000 people registered for it. Just blew the doors off of it. Actually broke the platforms for doing webcasts. Like go to a webinar, like looks at you and they're like, no effing way. We're not even going to try. Who does that? And it kind of morphed into doing this pay what you can training. And the pay what you can training has just worked out really, really well. And I can get into like why we set it up and how we set it up that way. But it just exploded. So our training and the cons and everything, I now got a group of people that are just running that stuff, making sure it continues to work. because there's such a huge need in the industry right now. So like I said, instead of crouching and being like, well, let's cut our payroll as low as we can get it to survive. No, screw it. We're going to go for the fences. If I go out of business from COVID, I'm not the only one. And I want my employees to know that I tried the absolute best I could to save the company, and it worked. And this is last year was a record breaking year for us, which is weird. It shouldn't have been that way for a lot of firms.
Yeah, I think our Q4 sales was a record, and our deliverables was, I think we had a record in Q4 ever. Yeah.
It's nice to know that there are other companies that, it's reassuring, because sometimes, you're out there doing the things you do, and I question my own sanity sometimes. Am I crazy? I mean, everybody else is doing this, but I don't feel like doing that.
Yeah. I think that's some type of sanity, right? Like if you're second guessing, kind of what you're doing, and you're looking at what everyone else does, and you're like, no, I'm going to try something different. There's definite places like rolling your own crypto. That's a bad thought to have. But if you're running a company, and I know that you guys run this too, where you have these companies that are like, we just got $20 million in VC funding, and they're all like partying and they're excited. You just got a $20 million loan, and they took a huge chunk out of your company, and you've lost control. You've lost your own destiny. And that's not the way I want to go. So you have all these people. I don't know if you get it. Like, what's your exit strategy? It's like, F you. That's my exit strategy. I have no desire to find a place where I can sell everything. And what the hell would I do with my time? Like, I love doing this.
Yeah, it's exactly the same way. There is no exit strategy.
Yeah.
There's no exit. There's no, we're certainly not taking investment, because I don't want to answer to somebody. We have a mission to accomplish. It's always mission before money. We had this, last year, we hired a new CFO kind of the end of the year before last. And she comes from a banking world, right, where things are a lot more conservative. And we had so many conversations. She's like, we really need to lay off 20% of our staff. And I'm like, why? Well, because we're going to lose money. I go, how much? And she's like, well, probably 2.2 million. I go, okay, what's our cash? Well, we got cash. Okay. So why do I care if we lose money?
Yeah. What are you going to do with it? Right.
Right.
Everything. Like, what is it? Like the Joker in The Dark Knight, where he's like, I like knives and gasoline, and these things are cheap. And in computer security, it's like, I love playing with like open source software and computers and switches and routers, and these things are my hobbies, and they're cheap. It's not like, well, you're not gonna get that sailboat. Oh, geez, that's not the way we're wired, right? So,
right. Yeah. In her defense, she has come around and realized it, but it was hilarious for watching her kind of like struggle with like, wait, why would you do that?
Well, and then she was like, I said, so how much cash do we have on hand? And she said something like some number of months. I'm like, I'm used to like how many days?
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell?
Oh my
Spend it. Let's go.
Oh my God. So years ago, we had somebody that was doing some contract stuff for us. I had shoulder surgery, and things kind of all went off the rails at the exact same time. And found out it's like, we are like, our cash on like hand after payroll was down to like $5,000. And we had like at that time, like 10, 15 employees, which, that's not a good cushion. And we were able to turn that around and keep going. But you're right. It's like, what's our survivability for accounts payable and cash on hand? And you're like, yeah, we can survive for the next 45 days. You're like, hell yeah, that's
right, let's
great. Let's do this. This is really cool. But now as your company matures, right, it gets to the point where it's like, if we win no more business from now on and we go out of business, our end of runway is like March of next year. And that's cool for the employees like that. They're like, okay, cool. I'm going to have some stability, and that brings assurances for the whole company. That's rare.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our work in progress is God knows what. It's huge. But but even the cash thing, I mean, right now, just yesterday or this week or whatever the hell, we were talking about cash, and I asked how much cash do we have? And they told me, and I was like, Why? What the hell does that do? I mean, it just sits there.
Well, we just hired a new pen tester. We're looking for another one. We've got 2 consultant positions we're
Right.
interviewing for.
Good-
We got
good luck.
80% of that market that we're still out there to try to get. Let's go get it.
Well,
Let's
and the
help
other
these
thing
people.
your hardest problem is finding good people. And
Mhm.
and I know there's a lot of hard workers. Like I get people all the time. They're like, I'm willing to learn, I'm a hard worker. And I spend a lot of time telling people like what that means to me is nothing. Like if you just come to me and you're like, I'm a hard worker. Now, if you come to me and you're like, I'm doing hack the box, I'm doing try hack me, I did a holiday hack challenge, I did this, that tells me that you're a hard worker and you're willing to learn. Just saying that doesn't mean a damn thing to me at all. So trying to find people, it's weird. I don't hire people that are unhappy. So if somebody's like, oh, my current job sucks and blah, 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 blah. If they hate where they're at, they're going to hate when they come to you. So I like finding happy people like, I'm happy where I'm at. Great. I'm going to steal you.
Right.
And because those are good people. But dang, finding like, especially for like pen testing type roles, it's really hard to find like the good people that you need to put in front of your customers. I can find bodies all day long, but people that mesh with a culture and they do it, that's the hard stuff right there.
Yeah. Oh, we've turned people down that were absurdly qualified because like, no, you're an a-hole. I'm not.
You're a dickhead. Yeah. We have a rule here. No dickheads.
Oh my God. Oh, but that's a carryover. You remember the way this industry was like if we go back like 15 years ago, maybe even 10. Like you look at the offensive community, we were horrible. I was definitely one of them, right? There's no question about that. But you know, within this community back in the day, it was like this piss and bravado of like, you know, oh, I can hack that, I can hack that, I can hack that. And, you know, if you haven't written a 0-day and all this garbage, and that was toxic as hell. Like it was just tough. And we still get those people. They're like, you know, I consider myself to be one of the best pen testers walking the planet. I'm like, no, I know those guys. You're not them. And I don't know who you are. So sorry, that spot's taken. You're not in that spot. And it's just that attitude is just so trash. And there's some, I don't know if you picked up on it, but there's some key phrases that they almost always say. Like one of the things I've heard like 10, 15 people say to me that were a-holes were like, I was doing object-oriented programming in high school before it was a thing. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm just burning your resume right now. I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, the fun part is the people that you want don't have to tell you that stuff.
That's true. Like, that's very true.
As soon as you start saying, well, I do all, I'm like, okay, tune out. You know, like I just, when we do the interviews, it's conversational. Like, is it a culture fit first and foremost?
Yeah, it was cool. We had this
you're interviewing with people. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say we had an interview with Daniel, Tokyo and Neon, who came and joined us. And the interview literally was a conversation on like golden ticket attacks and Kerberos and all this stuff. And what ended up happening is through that conversation, like talking about new possible avenues of doing the attack, we had to call Tim Medine and ask him a couple of questions. And it just like, it wasn't an interview, right? It was like this conversation, this give and take, this back and forth, which is like, this is a fit. Like, this is going to work.
Yeah.
Totally, 100%. And you're interviewing with, I mean, don't forget, you're interviewing with security people. You don't think we did some OSINT?
Oh my God. Yes. And then you end up calling people. It's like, you worked with this guy. What do you think? It's like, oh no, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work at all.
No. So you don't really need to tell us what it is that you've done. We probably already know.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we'll ask for questions to fill in the gaps.
And there are some quiet people that are just stealth and they're amazing, you know, and those are good people.
I love the humble, quiet people because they kind of freak me out a little bit too, though.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you really up to? I'm not really sure.
Oh.
It's a weird balance because you don't get to be good without having some sort of ego, right? Like we all know we're good at what we do, but you have to, it balances with being humble and knowing I don't know everything and there's people that know a lot more than me. So it's like a really fine line between being cocky and arrogant and I know I'm good, but I know I don't know everything.
But you know, and that is such a fine line, right? Like you can get your head wedged so far up your own ass
that
you just can't see anything. And that's something we always dealt with at the SANS Institute with instructors is
Right.
you get into the point where you've taught hundreds of times, and there's very rarely anybody that's going to ask you a question that you haven't answered dozens of times. And then people are just like, oh my God, how did you know that? You're a genius. It's like that quote from Groundhog Day, where it's like, maybe God isn't God. Maybe God is just somebody that's done it a lot. And so like some of these people, you look like you're a god, and eventually you start believing that shit. And I remember there's always this trajectory, and I went through it too. I remember I had like Ed Scotus and Mike Poor pull me aside about year 4 I started teaching, and they're like, so you're starting to get a big head. That's okay, that happens, and you need to stop. Like, and we could kind of start picking that crap up on instructors, and there's always this little point, and I pulled aside instructors and I'm like, dude, you're talking like your shit don't stink, and you need to like, what is it, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And but that's
Chickadee
hard.
check yourself.
Yeah, because it's difficult, right? Because when you're teaching, you have all these people, and you're sharing knowledge, and it's kind of like it's helping, and then you start believing it. But no, you got to find that way to stay humble, or at least try to stay humble. Otherwise, you end up losing yourself, and that's very, very difficult, and that ends up in a bad place. So
that's what my kids are for. Last time I was on, I did like a TV interview. My oldest daughter, was I don't know, 14, was like, "What are you doing? Blah blah blah. Microchips in the rain. Nobody cares." Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
So my favorite humbling thing that happened was with my son. I was teaching at a conference, and we had covered like wireless attacks and things like that. And one of the wireless attacks that we showed is with ncpa.cpl on Windows. You can go right into the wireless profiles, go to the wireless network, and then click the box show password. It'll show you the clear text password. Well, my son was using the hotspot on my phone, and I typed in the password for him. And we covered that section, and sure as hell, he got that password for my wireless hotspot. And then we're going on the class, and then we're talking about using name check, and then taking a user ID and doing a search with name check to find all the different sites that you have that user ID. So then my son does that with my Strand JS user ID, finds all these different places. And for a lot of things, I use random passwords. I use LastPass for like banks and really important things. But then there's things like, Pandora. What the hell? Like, I don't care, right? And I know somebody's going to be like, well, if I have your Pandora account, here's how I can ruin your life. And yeah, so at any rate, he goes through.
Talk about ego.
All of the different like sites that I had the exact same password. And he's like, I've got access to this account and this account and this account and this account. And an FBI agent in the front row hears him like giving me shit when this is happening. And he's like going through, he's like, oh my God. So the FBI went and got a coin and gave it to my son as an award. Like a whole bunch of agents showed up, and they're like, congratulations, Logan, you hacked your dad. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like an absolute turd. That's humility, I guess.
I love that. Well, and it's the people around you that, keep you humble, right? I hear a lot of crap from people that I don't want to hear, but thank God I heard it, because I'm my own worst enemy. I'd destroy myself.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I think, Evan, is teaching that CISSP class and realizing, oh my God, I forgot all this stuff. I don't remember.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. Every time. Every single damn time. So we, John, I don't know if we do this CISSP mentor program. We started in 2010. Nice. Yeah, it was 6 students. We had 2 employees then, and I don't know, it's just weird. And so this is the 12th year, and we had 6,400 some odd registrations. But every year you do it, and especially now when there's nobody like in front of you.
Oh my God.
You're teaching this and you're like, I have no idea if any of you understand a damn thing I'm saying. I can't see your faces.
Yeah.
And Evan hates me because he gave me the security models 2 years in a row. You try teaching Bibba and Bell LaPadula to a computer screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. And then But you know what? That cert has legs. Like I just don't know like what God they found favor in. But wow. Like but it's funny the amount of hate that cert gets. Like people rip on it all the time. But I keep telling people, you hate it or not, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
Mhm.
Like seriously, if you want a job in this industry, there's no cert in the world that gets you as many hits and clears HR hurdles better than the
Yeah.
CISSP. Like seriously.
And I think you hit the nail on the head too, right? It's about clearing an HR hurdle. It doesn't speak anything to what you can actually do on the job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you passed the test. It got you past HR.
Yeah.
So now where?
And that's kind of one of the things, you mentioned at the beginning, my pay what you can training. And I started going down that route, and we talked about it with COVID, but how we came to pay what you can is we were talking about doing it for free, and that's hard. Like whenever you're giving a VM to people and you have Amazon costs to get the labs and everything, that's pricey to just give it away for free. And then we were talking about making it really, really cheap. And then there was this concept of scholarships, and this gets weird, but I hate scholarships. And I want to explain why, because I know some people kind of freak out whenever I say that. It's like in this industry, you've seen it, where they're like, oh, we need more women, we need more minorities. And they always reach for that, right? They're always like, well, we're going to go and we're going to give out scholarships. And while I think that that's showing your heart's in the right place, and I think that that's helping that particular individual and it's great for that individual, it doesn't fix anything, right? It's not an actual structural solution to the problem.
Yeah.
It basically, for a lot of organizations, it's a way that they can be like, see, look, we're not sexist, we're not racist. And I
that virtual signaling.
That and we all virtual signal for everything. Like I wear pants and I'm signaling the fact that I think that we should all wear pants, right? But you start doing that and it doesn't change a damn thing. And it makes me mad. So one of the things we did is let's just destroy the gates completely. Let's just obliterate them, where it's pay what you can. If you can show up and you can pay $495, do it. If you can pay $195, awesome. You can pay 20, great. 5, awesome. You can't pay anything, shoot me an email. Tell me where you're at in life and where you want to go, and you get a discount code where you get to take the class for free. And I don't care what color you are. I don't care your religion. I don't care where you're from. I don't care about your hair color, nothing. I don't care. Just come.
Yeah.
And that systematically destroys the gates across the industry, because right now to get in, CISSP is a great gateway cert. It's awesome because it's attainable for a lot of people. But a lot of these stuff, like coming from the SANS Institute, if somebody wants to get involved in security, are you going to take a SANS cert to get started? No way in hell. You're going to drop $8,000. And for a lot of these jobs, they want someone that has a cert that costs $8,000, but in order to get the job, you have to have the cert. But to get the cert, you got to have a job that's willing to pay for the freaking cert. So it becomes this gate. So destroy the gates for everybody across the board. I don't care where you're coming from. We got people from Dubai. We've got people that are coming in from Kuala Lumpur. We got people coming from India, from Russia. It's just amazing. And I just don't care. And it's just amazing because we have these people show up. They're all eager to learn. They've never had the opportunity to have like world-class training before. And now all of a sudden they have like world-class training. And I know that that's a bit egotistical, but damn it, I did this for 17 years. I have thousands of evals. I feel pretty confident in saying that we're pretty good at what we do. And it's been amazing. Like I get these emails from people that like, I took your class and I put it on my resume, and simply because I took your classes, I got this job. And it's just like really awesome.
Right.
And that's all I ask. I think that people want that opportunity. They want to be able to attack this stuff. But if you're working 3 jobs to make ends meet, you can't pay for that stuff. So by creating that opportunity, and I have people a lot, they'll bring up SANS and they'll be like, well, you're competing with the place that got you started. I don't look at it that way. SANS has traditionally sucked at 2-day training. They just never could get it off the ground. And for me, success is if somebody gets a job that pays for a SANS cert, God damn, that's great success. That's getting that person to that point where their career can now start to take off.
Yeah. Well, we
love it.
get asked all the time, like, free? Really? What's the catch?
Right. No catch.
Well, here's the catch. We've gotten really good employees that have taken the class for free. I want to work for you. Yeah. But I don't, even if we didn't get any, just giving back and giving people the opportunity that honestly I didn't have coming up, it's worth it. But that's a benefit. Like anytime you get good people coming to you. Yeah.
Well, and how many times before times, right? In the before 4 times, whenever you're at a con, how many times do you have people come up to you and like shake your hand and even give you hugs because that was the thing that got them started and got them rolling through. And I know that that's that altruistic thing that's hard to quantify. And I know it's stroking your ego, but that's a good thing. And you know what, if I can die and I know that I actually helped a lot of people make their lives better, I'll take that action every day of the week.
I love getting the email.
Man.
Yeah, those emails when they're like, I passed the test. You know, can you? How do I get? Oh my gosh, I just forgot the word, but
words.
Your CPEs.
Yeah.
The validation form. And isn't that one of the coolest things? Signing it for them.
Yeah.
And then sending it in. Yeah, that's where it's at, right?
But we have this mission. I mean, the mission is to fix a broken industry. You know, and so I've had so many people ask me, well, is that even possible? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's a hill worth dying on. Well, and it keeps us honest. I mean, we'll always do. There's also a rule that if you do something that if you sell something the customer doesn't need, I'll run you over with my truck.
Yeah.
And I have an F-250, so I can get over some big people.
That's a big truck. But you know, you talk about making things better. Years ago at ShmooCon, the last time I think it was at Wardman Park during the Snowmageddon, or was it Snowmageddon? I can't remember. ShmooCon. And we were all snowed in for like 3 days. And it was probably one of my favorite experiences. My wife and I were there with the Security Weekly team. And Chris Nickerson got a room, like a conference room. And we got all these people together, you know, Dave Kennedy, myself, Kevin Johnson. It was Kevin Johnson's first time ever seeing snow. That was cool. Wow. And one of the things that Nickerson did, and Nickerson's Nickerson, right? Like if you've ever met him, you never forget him, because he's like, look, we suck. Like in this industry, we suck. And there's a lot of stuff that we don't have the ability to fix. But one of the things we can start doing is start treating each other with some respect. And he started talking about social media. Back then, social media was really kind of like taking off like a rocket. And all these petty tribal things were popping up, and people were sniping each other and ripping on each other. And it was creating these wars where lines were drawn. And basically what he talked about is there's people in the room that are big enough in name and have enough influence in their little Venn diagram circles that we can talk to people within our group. We can say, hey, you're being an a-hole. Yeah, but this guy's wrong. It's like, it's okay. It's okay if they're wrong. Let them be wrong. It's all right. And we kind of started having these back channel conversations to simmer the conversations down. And I think that worked, but that's a small thing, but it made this industry so much better, because if I was on the outside coming in, people were ripping on each other for a variety of just stupid damn reasons, you know, okay, you know, so what was it? Obtusec was one person that was kind of harsh against somebody that I knew. And then I can't remember who was ripping on Paul. Dev Knoll or something was ripping on Paul all the time. And it was just like, it was just this negativity. And it got better, but it got better in increments, right? And you talk about these boutique firms like Your Form, BHIS, Secure Ideas, Trusted Sec, and all these. It's like the more that we support firms that are doing the right thing, the more we define what security consulting is. And it's not being defined by like McAfee, Dell Secure Works, or like all of these huge companies. And it's going to be better. And it's always these increments. Like it's a CISSP class helping someone out, pay what you can class helping out. And we've got to be doing little increments everywhere that we can. And over time, we are going to get better. Now, there's some people who would disagree. They would say, oh my God, it's still a dumpster fire. And it is from time to time. But by and large, it's better than where it was.
Well, and so when you're faced with something like that, so let's say it is a dumpster fire. So then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Are you just going to sit there and let it burn? Or are you actually going to at least try to put it out? Maybe you have a glass of water. It's not going to put the fire out, but maybe it buys you a second or two before everything implodes. I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't just sit and watch it.
Well, and you know, there's fires that we have in the industry right now. Like I would say one of the big fires that we have, this pendulum goes back and forth in the industry, where offensive is cool and everything's offensive, and blue becomes cool and everything's blue. And right now, like one of the big fights that happens is, you know, the offensive tooling community, where you release a tool on GitHub, and then all of a sudden it's used in an attack. And then people are like, well, if you hadn't written this tool, then the Russians wouldn't have launched. That's garbage. And I also think we're missing the point sometimes. And I think that we need some older graybeards to kind of come in and, kind of bring some sanity to this, because I've talked to some people in the AV community 12 years ago where I was talking about bypassing antivirus engines, and they're like, how dare you? And I'm like, because our adversaries are doing it, man. And I'm not showing them anything. Like, they know how to do this, but to actually counter program, vendors that are saying, oh, my AV has 0 false positives and it detects everything. Nah, it isn't. And here we can prove that. Those are important lessons. And if we're looking at the offensive community, I got to be honest, blue team folks, if your biggest concern is a tool that's released publicly out on GitHub, and that tool can bypass, and its source code is all there, and we can't detect that, we're in big trouble. Let's be honest about this.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any advanced AI, machine learning, whatever, to get Evan going, because he hates those words. Endpoint, next gen.
Is my face turning redder?
Yeah,
it actually is. To be honest with you, it is, dude. So,
but with working IRs, every single vendor has not caught things. I mean, you can't just trust that. And adversaries know this.
And one of the things that I think that showed this in clear contrast was the Mitre attack evaluations, where Mitre went through and evaluated a bunch of vendors, and they evaluated Cylance and CrowdStrike and Defender and RSA and all these different companies, right? And every one of them had things that they missed. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is not interesting to me. I know that they're going to miss things, but what's really interesting to me is up until the first one, I think they started with like APT 3 or APT 1. And then they went to like, I think APT 29. Up until they released that, you could use Cobalt Strike and you could bypass a lot of those products, just a few small tweaks and modifications. But because they used Cobalt Strike and because they used PowerShell Empire, all those vendors got real good at detecting Cobalt Strike and PowerShell Empire right after that. And that's what they were freaking detecting. And, and then every vendor's like, we won this. I'm like, you missed 36 detects. You didn't win a damn thing in this. So I think that it's important to show people that and say, look, everything has weaknesses. Don't believe the hype from the vendor. Don't believe the hype.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then now with everything running in encoded PowerShell and memory, launching through Calc or Notepad, they're not catching that stuff because it's not running a signature that they know.
Well, and you still come back to signatures, right? I mean, I think my favorite example was Cylance. I think it was Cylance. I might be getting this wrong. But Cylance got in trouble because they were uploading things to VirusTotal. And the reason why is because they didn't have that history of a massive virus database that they could lean upon because they were a new company. So they were submitting all their crap to VirusTotal to try to get those traditional signature-based detections based on hashes and things like that, because you can't do it with just artificial intelligence. I always tell people, go look at Microsoft Tay. When Microsoft released Tay on the Twitterverse, they're like, here's a Twitter bot. The more you talk with Tay, the better Tay gets at talking. And in less than 24 hours, it was spewing like Nazi propaganda and some of the most horrible racist stuff in the world. And that's because artificial intelligence can be trained to the wrong stuff. I mean, it just can. And anybody that knows this stuff sees it.
I mean, even at the very beginning, right, there's got to be some beginning inputs into AI, and those are biased. Well, right? Whoever developed AI is biased. So it's like, because what was it last week? I think there was some Senate testimony. I like watching Senate testimony because I like watching kind of the BS that goes on. But you had Twitter, YouTube. I don't know who else. Tristan Harris was there from, Center for Humane Technology or whatever. And they were talking about, the algorithms behind, what you see on, Facebook and the thing that always seems to win here is logic, right? Think through, you talk about graybeards. There was a day when life was a lot simpler than it is today. Yeah. And it was a lot easier to secure things. It was a lot because we understood them. I understood how my network worked because I built the damn thing, and every line in the config, I understand what it does. And then we continue to add more and more complexity and more complexity. And now people are way out here on the fringe talking about endpoint and all these other things, and they don't even know what it is they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
What do you have? You can't protect what you don't know you have. Why don't you start there?
Well, dude, whenever we started with the critical controls years ago, when Alan Poller kicked this out, and now it's pretty much being ran by James and Kelly Tarala at Enclave, so full credit and props to them. Whenever that started out, the first two controls were inventory your software, inventory your hardware, and we always said that we started with those first two because they were the most important. And as much as we, get on our soapbox and we talk about that, it's amazing to me how much of the industry is still like, yeah, no, that looks
It's
hard.
crazy.
I mean, it's so important. I think it's Rumble. That's where HD More is, right? Like automatic inventory and asset identification. I mean, that HD More, one of the smartest of us, right? Like
Right.
I'm talking Dan Kamitsky level security superstar. And he's in the game of inventory management. That says something, right? Because you honestly can't protect. Think about IR. How many times are you working an IR gig and you know that something's popped on the network, it's generating alerts, like, where's this IP address? And they're like, oh, I have no idea.
Oh my gosh.
And
then when
it's
you do find it, it's like, who owns this system? I don't know.
No.
What does it do? I don't know.
Can we shut it
Why
off?
the hell
I
is it-
wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
Oh
Don't
my.
shut that
Oh
down.
no.
Hey,
Hold up.
yeah, that's my favorite. Hey, you have Cobalt Strike. We're seeing it make calls to the Netherlands. Can we quarantine? No, it's production.
No. That's production. Yeah, we can't. Good God. Like,
So,
really? So,
you'll get a kick out of this. Tomorrow, I actually am doing a webinar, and it was framed to me by marketing. Thank you, marketing, as data heist protecting the crown jewels. Okay, I can get behind that. Turns out the topic that I got was data science and cybersecurity.
what? You know what, dude? That's fun, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
as long as you're approaching it.
But
I hate it, like the artificial intelligence thing, but there's so many cool algorithms that can help sort that data. But good night. Like, yeah.
Well, the
You
fun
know what's
part-
weird? You're gonna find this out, Brad, when you give that presentation and you start talking about like k-means clustering and Bayesian and all that stuff. There's gonna be people that you're gonna present to who could be like, never once has a vendor ever told me what they were actually doing. And just having that breath of honesty about data science and computer security, people's minds just explode. They're like, that's cool, but why aren't the vendors telling us that?
What's fun is the other person that I'll be on there is a vendor that does data science with machine learning. So that could get interesting.
We're not allowed to call them out?
I know, I'm just saying it'll be fun.
Oh, dude,
Send it to an email and I'll call it out on a shit show.
I'll tell you a story. So I was talking about k-means clustering versus like MADMOM, medium average distribution of the mean, at a conference. And the vendor had actually sponsored this session was Darktrace. And I was talking about the problems with k-means clustering. K-means clustering allows you to find consistencies in data patterns. So we talk about it in beacons. So we can look at interval. If you have a consistent interval, let's say a backdoor that beacons out once every 10 seconds, k-means is your algorithm, right? It's going to be able to find that consistency. And I went through and I was talking about k-means and I was like, k-means is great for this, but as soon as you start getting a dispersion, let's say a jitter of plus minus 20%, or if it goes quiet, if the system gets powered off for 8 hours and then it powers back on, k-means completely misses the plot. Here's all the problems with k-means clustering. And it's good for these things, not good for these things. And that's how all machine learning algorithms go. They're good for some things, not for others. And we use MADMOM, which does a statistical distribution, and you can actually find jitter and things like that. And I go through and I explain all of this, right? And like a lot of vendors say that they're doing k-means, and you see it in Splunk, and you got this, you got this, you got this. And boy, it's tough. If you're using k-means to do this, it's just a train wreck. Freaking vendor from Darktrace gets up, and his presentation is how they use k-means for their analysis. And I'm like, I just did 20 minutes on how k-means doesn't work for like 95% of what you're doing, and then he gets up there and k-means is awesome. Here's what we're using, and it's like, oh god, and they paid for this. So yeah, you got to watch that. But the cool thing is, sometimes with vendors, they're kind of oblivious to what you're talking about. They just got you pull the Elmo string on the back and they go into presentation mode, and then just hope for the best.
Yeah, no, it'll be fun.
Didn't Darktrace just go public in London on the London Exchange, I think, today?
I think they did.
yesterday?
I think so.
Yeah, I've had my issues with Darktrace, but anything is good if you're using it for what it's built for, right? A hammer is good. A hammer is good for hitting a nail. It's not good for cutting a piece of wood.
I agree. So like if you're looking at Darktrace is awesome. Like I've actually sat down and talked to some of the data scientists. I think I was in Vancouver. I was up in Vancouver, besides Vancouver, and I was presenting there, and they had a bunch of their engineers. And I went up to the table and we started talking algorithms. Because I like those things. And their engineers like lit up, and they're talking about all their algorithms and how they're like profiling network traffic on the inside for east-west movement and what they're doing. And I'm like, that's really cool. And we're writing things down. And a lot of these engineers are like in their like 20s. And it's funny because there was like a manager there, and I'm sitting there and I'm talking about all this stuff and kind of sharing what we do in Rita, and how we do our beaconing analysis, and talking about it. And then finally, like one of the managers just like steps in and is like, this conversation needs to be over. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, this needs to be over. Like, this is all patented. And I'm like, that's bull. Like every algorithm you're using was released open source in the 70s, man. Come on. Right. But no, he was like, no, we're done. But Darktrace, I look at Darktrace and I think it's really cool, right? And extra hop is really, really cool. The thing that gets me is it's complicated to implement in a lot of environments. It takes a lot of data to get it right. And holy God, is it expensive. Right. Super expensive. Like, I've had customers, one box is like $100,000. Like there's a company that does cruises, and they have a cruise ship that has it up and running. $100,000 for a simple box. And that's really freaking pricey to actually do that. And then ultimately, the thing that really makes me mad is a lot of them, if you're looking at what they do, they're like trying to detect lateral movement, and they're trying to do it still on network. And I believe fundamentally the best way to detect lateral movement is in your Active Directory logs, because your data is going to be tied in Active Directory. You're going to see the logs when they're doing Kerberos to see if somebody has access to certain files. You got artificial intelligence algorithms you can throw in your Active Directory logs that do stacked analysis. Like this user's logged into one workstation, no big deal. This user's logged into 5,000 workstations. Okay, that's now a big deal. We need to investigate that. And it's not like it's hard math, but you can do it. So it's cool, but I think if you're going to spend money, you should run your money on detecting lateral movement in Active Directory logs before you're doing something that's really, really super expensive. And if you're looking at extra hop is awesome, but I don't know, like NTOP seems like it does a lot of what extra hop does, and it's free to dirt cheap. So
right.
I don't know. It's just like a vendor with a better marketing budget seems to do this stuff. And I'm going to have these people hate mailing me. And that's okay. That's fine.
And that happens though, because you do need to be called out, right? One thing we don't want customers doing is not going out and buying things that you don't understand, that you're not capable of using correctly. There's a progression, there's a maturity that, there's a reason why our industry has been using this term maturity for so long.
Well, you're absolutely right. Like if you're an investment firm and you have zero tolerance for any risk, go talk to Darktrace, go talk to Vectra, right? Like right now, go talk to them, right? Yep. If you're a small to medium sized business and, maybe there's a whole bunch of other technologies that you could buy that are cheaper or implement before you get to that point.
Maybe some asset management.
Well, maybe some asset management, right? Or maybe I'm just throwing this out there. I always freak out for companies. It's like, have you thought about implementing application allow listing by just directory? I can bypass it as an attacker, but it shuts down like 95+% of drive-by attacks. Like that's cheap. Let's do that.
And that's risk
logging, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's risk management, right? The goal, and we advise this all the time. I don't know how many times we've talked with CISOs, large companies down to small companies. The goal is not risk elimination. Stop trying to go there. It's risk management, right?
Yeah. And I have companies, and you do too, that they're going for risk elimination, and they're willing to throw the money at it. And like we have one customer that does a full rip and replace of their entire network stack to make sure it's at the newest stuff every 5 years, which is cool because we get their old stuff. Whenever they're running vendors, like they actually have licenses for like all of the major EDR vendors. They got a sandbox, multiple pen testing companies coming in, evaluating, bypassing, and coming up with mitigations for this stuff. They have, I think, 120 employees, and 6 of them are full-time security professionals, and they're working with consulting firms around all of this. So they're playing that game, right? They're trying to go as fast and as hard as they can because they know from a reputation perspective, one hack, they're out of business. Like that's zero tolerance that they actually have in their organization. And everybody is on board, from the CEO all the way down to the mail boy, right? They all get it. And they're like, we're going to make things harder on you because we have to be secure. And
cool.
but that's think about how rare that is. Like that's not possible, right? That doesn't scale. You just can't do that. So
that would be a lot of stress to work under that environment, because you're being asked and you're trying to do what truly is impossible.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, no matter how much money you throw at it, it's,
it
not
is
going to stop everything.
But the guy that runs it, he has a good relationship with the C-Os, and they get it. They understand that they're going to get compromised, and they understand that it's going to happen, and they want to know how much can they limit it, how quickly can they detect it. And then the other thing is, do they have a narrative and a story that they can go to their customers and basically be like, look, this is all that we're doing, and we got hit by like a SolarWinds level attack where it was a nation state attacker. And that's what they want to push. They want to push it. You have to be at a nation state level or higher to come at this firm. They don't want the embarrassing, there was SQL injection on this particular web portal. Oopsies. So that's kind of the narrative.
Well, RDP was open?
Yeah. RDP was open with a password of company name 123. Yeah.
That never happens. Well, it's funny you mentioned SolarWinds too, because I have a beef. I always have a beef with something, but I think that's what keeps me busy. Kevin Mandia, I think Brad Smith and George Kurtz were called, to their Senate testimony. And one of the things, Senator Wyden, who's from Oregon, asked this question, and it was kind of dead on. It was cool to see that they actually asked a good question, but it was, the IRS had Orion installed, and the IRS, had restricted Orion's ability to communicate with anything outside, right? It didn't need the ability to communicate with the outside world. So essentially, a properly configured firewall, right? Ingress, egress. And so he posed the question to these guys, would a properly configured firewall, meaning basically the only thing that's permitted to talk through this firewall is permitted traffic, would that have stopped this attack or mitigated this attack? Not all the other potential attacks, because that's not the point, this particular attack. And the answer is yes. But the answer you got from, like Mandia was, we do 600, FireEye does 600, red team exercises every year, and a firewall's never stopped us. But that wasn't the question. The question was a properly configured firewall. And there's always a bypass. But the question was also, would it have stopped this particular attack? So you already have a tool if you had locked it down. And the answer, truly would have been yes. Could you have gotten around it? Yes, absolutely. But the way the attack actually worked and played out, there was no command and control then.
So I think that there's a couple of things. I agree with that sentiment, but my fear is that, and Kevin's absolutely right. The amount of times that we're caught by a firewall is like none. That's why we released Rita. That's literally why we released Rita, because for C2 data exfiltration, it's like, well, what can we do? It's like, you're screwed. And I hate that answer. So I'm like, here's a free tool that we've written that allows you to detect that in your Zeek logs. So Kevin's 100% correct. And the issue is that properly configured is a scary thing, right? Because what does it mean? Does it mean that Like, how would you actually baseline where all the patches and the updates actually come into for a specific application, especially whenever you're looking at a lot of people using Akamai to distribute patches. I mean, hell, even Microsoft is using Akamai,
Mhm.
and you got that as a problem with CDNs. Um, so that is somewhat of an issue. And then if you layer domain fronting on top of it, it gets even more complicated to try to deal with it. So I don't know. I mean, it's not an easy answer, right? It is
Well,
absolutely
if you have a server that doesn't require communication to the internet to function, why would you allow it to communicate with the internet?
updates, right? Patches and updates,
But there are
right?
other ways to
And
apply updates too. I mean, I don't
there
need to
are,
leave that as an open firewall rule indefinitely.
but we can't go back to the days where we're literally downloading our patches and installing them manually. I mean,
No,
that's just really hard, the complexity. And then the final thing is DNS. A lot of these different tools, they're going to use DNS. And whenever you're looking at how most environments actually run, DNS in a local system is going to go to the domain controller, and the domain controller is going to make the DNS request out to the internet, to your external resolver. Yes, no, good luck.
right.
So if you're using DNS as a command and control situation in that, so does it mean that your firewall is not properly configured?
Well,
Damn it. I don't know, because I think that there's always a way. And I think you said that, right, Evan? You said that there's always a way,
right.
and you're going to run into that. But it gets dicey really fast when you're dealing with updates and you're dealing with DNS. How do you actually stop that from happening? And the way that we approached it with Rita is we can detect it.
Right.
Yeah, sure as hell. As soon as that HTTP beacon fires up with Solar Winds and Orion, yeah, it lights up. It's using Cobalt Strike's
Yeah.
HTTP module, and we can detect it. DNS backdoors, we can absolutely detect those. But the stopping it, that's like right at the beginning, that's real hard, because then it becomes a data science problem, which requires a large collection of data, versus a blocking problem, which you're trying to make a decision on a packet by packet basis. It's hard. It's real hard.
And I think a little bit of background too, because when you mentioned that, Whiteman asked the FireEye representative or SolarWinds representative, does this product require internet access to function in the way it was being used? And he said no.
Mhm.
And so that's where it led to, well, if they did, why did they give it access if he just said it doesn't need access to actually work?
But he's completely wrong, right? Like, he's wrong. I mean, and the fact that the attack happened shows that he's wrong, because how the malware got on the Orion box was through the updates. So, like,
Right.
by the
But the
very
malware
nature,
wasn't functional. There was no command and control then.
yeah, there was
So
no command
having
and
the
control.
malware there is,
Yep. Totally right. But then we're back to that thing. Try to stop me from pivoting out of an environment. And the
true.
Russians are getting really, really good at this, right? And I
Right.
hate it because they use some of our tools, and it's just you absolutely, if you can talk to like that 1% of the industry, that you can say, hey, we need to lock our firewall rules down, they get it. They know what it means, right?
Right.
And they can do it. But that's such a fleetingly small percentage. And I think it ultimately comes down to an education problem. Back to what we started talking about at the beginning. We need
Yeah,
more education.
100%. I agree with that too. And one of the things, Bruce Schneier, it's always rung true for me, since the 90s when I first heard him say it, complexity is the worst enemy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so, we've made our environment so damn complex that you're right. Firewall blocking back in the, early 2000s is totally different than what it is today. It's a lot more of a challenge. It's harder to do. But at some point, where does this end if we just continue to add more and more tools, more and more complexity, you come
Dude,
up with it's crazy.
Dude, we're screwed. And I hate to
Yeah.
try to end this thing on a downer, but so
Have a good
two
day.
things. Yeah, we're done. Everybody, it's hopeless. And it kind of is, right? Like, if you're looking at the complexity as the enemy of computer security, the complexity from the technologies that we're dealing with are exploding. And we're just now getting to the point where we can deal with Active Directory level attacks. Okay. But everybody's migrating things to the cloud. So now you got like Azure, you have AWS, you have all these APIs, you're moving. And most security people, like, we have no idea how Docker and Kubernetes works, and we like containerized security, none whatsoever. We're like, is it like a virtual machine, right? And it's just, we're hosed. And the developers, they don't even know how this stuff works, and they're not implementing security. Because like, if you actually know what you're doing with some of these things, you're like, oh my God, like default API creds, like showing up all over the place, or opening up management interfaces, and that complexity is just exploding. And that is a massive concern that we have for all of this. And but like I said, don't be depressed about that, because job security for a good long time. Like you're not going to be on a bread line anytime soon at all.
Job security, but just unplug your own shit.
Yep, unplug everything. As the kids are like, Daddy, why can't I play Xbox and like go to Snapchat? Because it's evil.
Stay away. Yeah, well, I've got. I was telling, I've had this countdown. September 15th, 2023 is the day I retire, which means I'm kind of sidelining. I'll do nonprofit stuff, I think, more, but it's 864 days. So I keep telling these guys, just hold this shit together for another 864 days. Please.
Every time you say that, it gives me heartburn.
Yeah, well, I've talked about like the same thing. It's like eventually I'm going to have to go off into the sunset. I don't know what I'm going to do, but there's going to come a point where I'm like, you guys remember your bosses way back in the day, and they'd come in and they'd be like, yeah, I remember back in my day with Turbo Pascal and COBOL, and they tell you this long story that was completely irrelevant to anything that you were talking about. I'm afraid of becoming that, where it's like, all right, so now we're going to fire up Netcat, and everyone starts snickering. They're like, Netcat, really?
Netcat. What the hell is Netcat? Never even heard of that. Yeah.
And that happened probably 5 years ago for me. So those days are coming where they're going to put me out to pasture and give me a nice pile of grain to keep me occupied.
The good thing, maybe John, maybe you can go here, because I think this is kind of where I've already settled. The basics, the fundamentals, those things haven't changed.
No,
they're still the same.
And the thing that sucks is new people are trying to jump into. They're like, okay, so I need someone to explain Spectre and Meltdown to me. It's like, no, I really don't. Like, we can talk about speculative execution and ring -3 and, like all of these things. How about we learn TCP/IP and operating systems first? And we'll work up, because you go back to that firewall thing, a properly configured firewall. If you don't understand TCP/IP, you don't understand UDP, you don't understand DNS, you don't understand SCTP, you don't understand QUIC or Quick Protocol, you're gonna have a bad day. But yeah, it comes back to education every time.
Well, and they're dangerous, right? I mean, when you don't get those basics, those foundational, fundamental things, and I put tools, in front of you, you don't know how they function. You start breaking things, and then we have legal issues and God knows what else.
That's what we do. Well, gentlemen, I got to get running.
Yeah, let's finish this up. John, how do people find your pay-as-you-go?
Oh, dear God.
Real quick.
So if you just Google John Strand, pay what you can,
Okay.
It's going to take you to Wild West Hack and Fest. And if you go to Wild West Hack and Fest website, go to training, it's there. And of course, on the Twitters, because my whole entire life is completely hooked into how many people follow me on Twitter, because that's the way the world works today. I'm Strand JS on Twitter. And that's where I try to announce all that stuff I can.
All right, cool. We'll wrap this up. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in. Huge thank you, John, for you taking time to spend with us. I learned a ton. It was cool to listen to a lot of the things you shared. If you want to get social, John just told you how to get a hold of him. I'm at Evan Francine. Brad is at Brad Nye. And that's it. It's a wrap.
All right, everybody. Take care.